with those feet just underneath the hips, we'll let the toes point forwards. And we'll just take a moment to allow ourselves to really zone in on how our body's feeling today. Allow ourselves to settle into what we're up to. So some of us may have had a particularly busy week. I know some of us are feeling a bit tighter or a bit sore in certain areas. Some of us are desperately waiting for an osteopath appointment. And others of us have been feeling fit and healthy and ready and raring to go. So what I want you to do today is just take some time to really check in on how you're feeling and allow yourself to work at the pace that's right for you. With those feet underneath the hips then, we'll allow the toes to point forwards. And let's take a few gentle breaths. And if you're in a position that you can allow your eyes to close and you feel comfortable with that, then by all means do. Just as we allow ourselves to become really internally focused. So we'll allow our breath to come and go nice and gently. Allow the weight to track gently over the front of the feet. And allow the weight to track into the back of the feet. And taking it through those two extremes, tracking gently forwards and tracking back over the feet. And then finding that place where our weight is right in the centre of the 2 feet. And when we find that place, let's draw gently up through the arches of the feet. We'll allow there to be a little bit of softness into the knees. And finding a little bit of softness into the hips. And then, as if the pelvis were a bucket of water filled to the top, let's gently tip the pelvis forwards and tip the pelvis back. Taking it through those two extremes. And then we'll find that place where it feels as though the pelvis is nice and level. So we're not tipping out the front or out the back. Now from there we're going to think about lifting the muscles of the pelvic floor. So we've got those muscles right at the bottom of the pelvis. We're going to allow ourselves to lift gently up, drawing up through the pelvic floor. And feeling that we can really lengthen through the spine. And we'll allow the shoulders to lift and then roll the shoulders gently back and down. And again the shoulders lift and roll gently back and down. Lovely. And as we do that, let's just allow ourselves to really release out of any tension, any stress. And we'll just let it go. We'll allow those shoulders to ease towards one another and sink down towards the tailbone. Top of the head floats up towards the space above us. Take a deep breath and allow the right arm to float forwards and up. And breathing in as the arm floats back down. Changing over to the other side, opposite arm floats forwards and up. Breath in as we float back down. Lovely, keep that going for me. Good. So if you find that at the moment your shoulders are just not happy and it's just the lift just in front of you, that's fine. Let's see if we can allow ourselves to be really even on both sides. So if we're lifting one arm at the same height as the other arm's going to lift. Lovely. And then we'll bring the arms back by our sides. Take a deep breath and allow the right ear to dip down towards the right shoulder. And then the head gently lifts up over to the opposite side. Letting the head release on down. And again we lift the head up over to the right side. And again up and over to the second side. And then bringing the head into the centre, we'll allow the head to gently rotate round to the right side. Breathing in as we come back to the centre and rotating round to the opposite side. And once again in each direction. And as we bring the head into the centre, we'll take a little roll down through the spine. Let the head be nice and heavy, and we'll start to roll ourselves down through the spine. As we do, I'm going to talk you through a few bits and bobs. If there's any soreness through your back today, draw the hands down the front of the thighs. Just use the hands for a little bit of extra support. Breathing out as we roll back up through the spine. As we come on top, we'll lift the shoulders, roll the shoulders back and down, and allow both arms to float forwards and up. And we breathe in as we allow the arms to float back down. And again, release through the top of the head, rolling down through the spine. We keep that going, keep moving gently through the spine. If we need this to be a smaller movement, that's fine. Just let the knees take a little bit of a softness and just allow yourself to find as much movement through the vertebrae as you can. If you know that there are spine issues, which mean that folding forwards, doing flexion through the spine don't really work for you, by all means take a little squat action there instead. Nice and deep with the breath. And we'll check that we've got that really good core connection so the pelvic floor is lifting. Last one for me there. And rolling the shoulders back and down, let the arms gently float forwards and up. Lovely. Breathing in as the arms float back down for me there. Take a deep breath, and we'll just take a little bend through the knees to warm up through the ankles and the knees. Lovely. Let's do that a few times. Notice that we're bending at the knees, but the hips are staying nice and stable and still. So if you had a plumb line attached to your tailbone, it would just be drawing downward. And there's no hinge at the hip here, so really looking to find that connection to allow you to stay nice and stable. I've got quite long Achilles, so I'll go reasonably low in this squat, but not everybody does, and that's fine. It might be a really tiny bend. Adding the arms in if you feel ready to, so the arms open out to the side. Yeah, lovely. So as I do that, I'm imagining sliding down a wall, and it really helps me to sort of visualise the wall as my arms. I've noticed though that adding in the arms, for some people, it makes it even harder not to hinge forwards. Let's just see if we can really be mindful of where that tip comes and see if we can leave that for our later work, our squats later. And finishing off there, we'll take a little side bend. So the right fingertips start to glide down the side of the leg. Softness through the knees. Breathing in as we come back to the centre. Up and over to the opposite side. Lovely. Coming through the centre, up and over to the right side. Lovely. And if you want to add in the top arm, do. Let that arm extend up and over. Coming through the centre, up and over to the opposite side. Lovely. Last one on each side. And then as we come back to the centre, let's allow ourselves to draw those fingertips in towards one another, just softening to the knees slightly. Hips are going to stay nice and level, and we'll let the rib cage gently rotate round. Breathing in as we return back to the centre, and then rotating around to the second side. So as I do this exercise, I often see people bringing their hips round with them, which then creates a twist through the knee. So I want you to see if you can really stabilise through the core, making sure the pelvis stays as still as it can be. One more on each side. So as we finish off on that second side, we'll come back to the centre and let the hands come in front of us. Shoulders gliding down the back. Nice sense of connection through the core muscles. Take a breath. Shoulder blades glide together as the arms open out. And we breathe in as we draw the arms back in together. And again, the arms gently open out. Breathing in as we draw the arms back together. And opening gently out. And drawing back together. Lovely. This time we're going to look at taking that right arm around and above the head. So we take a deep breath, the arm circles around, comes above the head. And then we circle back around and in front of us, other side. Lovely. One more on each side. Lovely. And then let's take the hands out to the side. See if we can push through the heel of the hand. Take a deep breath and gently circle for 3, 2, 1. Change direction. 3, 2, 1. Lovely. Taking the hands behind us. We'll see if we can find our elbows. We might lace the fingers together and let the shoulders glide together that way. It might be holding on to the elbows. So we're taking nice deep breaths there. If you want to find a prayer position, letting the fingertips reach up, you can do. It might be here. I know I've got lots of shoulder issues going on at the moment, so we want to really be kind to them, but see if we can get as much movement through that area as we can. So taking a nice deep breath there, we'll let the head just dip over to the right side. Coming back to the centre and up and over to the opposite side. And once again on each side. And then allow the arms to release and give them a little shake out. So just looking to really identify into the shoulder there, I want you to allow your right hand to energise. So we're going to push into the right hand. We're going to allow the fingertips to stay pointing forwards, and then we'll point the fingertips back. So with that sense of energy through the hand, pointing forwards and then pointing back. As if you had your hand on a worktop and you're just sliding the hand around. Lovely. So then from there, fingertips are pointing forwards. We're still energised through the hand as we allow the arm to open out to the side. And then drawing gently back in. So if there's a shoulder issue at the moment, it might not go very high, and that's okay. Just keep working on it. You could do this maybe every morning, just to get that range of movement back working for you. And last one, give it a little shake out. We'll change and do exactly the same thing on the other side. So energising through to that left hand, fingertips point forwards, fingers point back behind you. And pointing forwards, pointing gently back behind, and forwards. Just one more there. With the fingers pointing forwards, we'll allow the arm to open out to the side. Lovely. And finishing off there, giving the arm a little bit of a shake out. So we'll take a deep breath there, and as we breathe out, we're going to start to think about our balance work. So if the eyes were closed before, let them open now. We'll take a deep breath in, and we'll allow the right foot to start to lift away from the floor. And then we'll float that foot back down, and we'll change over to the other side. So we'll keep that going, switching sides each time. And again, we're going to think about that pelvis staying really nice and still. So the tailbone's descending down, pelvis stays nice and stable, and we're not tipping out from one side to the other. And then we'll have a little bit of a play with this. So we'll allow that right leg to lift, and we'll allow the knee to open out to the side. Drawing the leg back into the centre and floating gently down. And the other leg lifts, knee opens out to the side, and drawing the leg back in and floating back down. Good. Let's add the arms in that we did earlier. So we'll just allow both the arms to open out to the side, shoulders glide down the back, drawing the leg and the arm back together, the arms back together. Lifting the opposite leg, and we gently open out to the side, coming back in and floating down. This time, if you want to, we're going to add a little rise in between. So shoulders glide together, arms open out, draw the arms back in, place the feet down, lift the heels, and we just push the arms down. And then bring the arms back into place as you lift that left leg. Knee opens out to the side, drawing back in, and we take the rise. Lovely. Once again on each side. And last time on that second side. Good, taking that rise. Lovely. So we're going to take some little lunges forwards here. So just making sure you've got a little bit of space in front of you. We'll allow that right leg to lift. We'll take a big step forwards, and then the back heel can lift as we take a lunge down. And then we lift and we bring the weight back. I'm going to show you that on the side. So the leg lifts, we take a big step forwards, and back heel stays lifted. We're aiming for a kind of 90-90 angle through the legs. And again, we lift. Big lunge forwards. And now if you want to, arms can open out to the side and sweeping back and floating down. Lovely. Let's do that on the other side. We lift, bring the arms out. Big hoik back. Whoop, she says. And floating down. Good. One more on each side. And we lunge. Big hoik back. And floating down, changing over to the other side. Obviously the word hoik is in every Pilates manual. That may only be my own manual. Let's take some legs extending behind us. So we're going to slide that right leg behind and give it a little squeeze through the buttock. And then floating back in, changing over to the other side. Stretching that leg away. And allow the leg to draw back in. Now let's allow both the arms to lengthen forwards as we stretch the leg away and draw them back in. I believe you all know where we're going with this. So if you feel ready to, you can start to lift that leg a little higher and the torso comes into line as well. And we draw back in. And we do the same thing on the other side. Now, if anybody's feeling really adventurous, we'll combine our lunge and our Superman. It's going to look like this. We lift the leg, we take our lunge down, we come back up, and then we sweep the leg back behind us. I appreciate you need quite a bit of room. So if you haven't got the room, then, you know, play around as you feel for what you want to. We lift the leg, big lunge forwards, bring it back, step and extend back. Now that we know what we're doing, we're going to do one more on each side and we're going to really go for it. Make it as big as we can. Lift up, big step forwards. Draw it back in. Find the balance before we press away. And drawing back in, changing over to the other side, big step forwards, arms go wide, come on in, whoop, and stretching that leg back behind us. And drawing the legs back in, well done. Give it a little shake out. And then we'll allow ourselves to roll down through the spine and we'll bring ourselves onto hands and knees. Taking a nice deep breath, we'll roll gently down through the spine. Heavy with the head, softening through the knees, walking the hands gently forwards. So we'll allow those knees to come underneath the hips and we'll allow the hands to come underneath the shoulders. When we're there, let's take a moment to really ease into that cat stretch. So we've got the back pushing up into the sky, we've got the head releasing, tailbone points down. And then we're going to lengthen the head and the tail away from one another, shoulders glide down the back, strong through the tummy. And again, we push the back up into the sky, tailbone points down, head releases. And lengthening the head and the tail away from one another, shoulders glide down the back. Let's take 2 more like that. So we're really looking to find that mobility through the spine. And last one. So we'll take a nice deep breath here. We're going to find our swimming exercise. Now in this position, I find it really useful to connect my belly button and let that be my focus rather than pelvic floor. Just feel like the energy away from gravity is a really good focus. So we've got the tailbone stretching in one direction and the head extending in the other direction. Take a nice deep breath in and right leg stretches away from us. Little squeeze in the bottom and then we draw the leg back in, changing over to the other side. My little Buddha lady's going to take a topple if I'm not careful. Extending and lengthening away and drawing the leg back in. Changing sides. I always get told off because I always think my Buddha looks like a lady. It's not a lady, it is a man. Shoulders gliding down the back, head extends out and away and drawing that leg back in. Let's change over to the opposite leg, and as we do we can allow the opposite arm to extend out and away, and we're breathing in as the arm and the leg return. So if you feel ready to, from here we're going to take our little knee openers. So we're going to allow the knee to just open out to the side and then we draw the leg back in. Changing to the other side. Opposite arm to leg extends away. Breathe in as we allow that leg and the arm to draw in, knee opens out to the side. So we're aiming to keep the hips really nice and still. Some people call this one the Superman, I call it a modified swimming exercise. As we draw in here, if you watch any American exercise programs, they call this the fire hydrant. I believe in Britain we call it the dog weeing up the lamppost, but I'm not sure that that's its technical term. And last one there. And just allow yourself to sit back onto your heels. We'll lengthen the arms out in front of us, rest the forehead. Some of us will be feeling a bit sore in our wrists, so by all means take a moment to just give them a little jiggle out, a little wriggle. And then let's allow ourselves, with our bottoms pushed back as far as we can towards our feet. We're going to walk the hands around to the right side and we're going to stretch that left arm across us. We're going to push into the left hip. And take some nice deep breaths. Deep breaths? I don't know what that was. We're going to take some nice deep breaths. Changing over to the other side. And allowing that right arm to lengthen. Pushing into the right hip. Nice and deep with the breath. Good, and then coming into the centre. Let's allow ourselves to come up onto our knees, and we're going to take a really nice stretch into our hip there. So we're going to allow the right leg to step forwards, a nice big step forwards, I know that this one isn't lovely for everyone on their bottom knee, so if you need a little bit of extra padding to just bung under your knee now, by all means do. So we're lifting nice and tall, and we'll just tip gently forwards and back. So those of us that are quite free in the lower back and free in the hips, this just feels like lovely, lovely. Others of us find this one really quite hard to get that action in the pelvis, either because of this lower back stiffness or a stiffness in the hips. So just, you know, stick with it, see what you can achieve. And then we're going to, if you want to, either stay like that, or if you want to, just shuffle the foot a little bit further forwards, and then we'll bring the weight forwards over that foot, and we'll bring the opposite hand down. It's quite a nice deep stretch into the hip there. I allow the other hand to stay in place because I'm quite open in my hips, so my knee, if I don't watch it, my knee will just drop out to the side. So I kind of use this other arm to just kind of stabilise it. Good, bringing that leg back, and then we'll change over to the other side. If we can, we're going to use a little bit of core strength to hook the leg forwards. If we need to use the floor to adjust ourselves, to stabilise ourselves, that's absolutely fine. And again, we've got that tipping forwards and back. I think just being in this kneeling position is a little bit of a challenge to the balance, which is all rather marvellous. And then we'll either keep that hip tipping forwards and backwards action going, or we can allow that foot to shuffle a little bit further forwards, and then we'll come forwards. Again, placing the opposite hand down if that's where the hand comes to, and I'm using this other hand to just keep the knee in line so the knee doesn't drop out to the side. And we'll just take some really nice deep breaths there. Woo, as we release into the pelvis. Nice one, well done. And so releasing back, I do want to take our thread in the needle. So hopefully our wrists have had a moment to release. Coming back to that hands and knees position, we'll strong through the core, we'll take a deep breath, we'll allow one arm to lift, and we'll weave the hand through. And then we'll breathe in as the arm gently returns, and then we'll change over to the other side. We lift the hand, we weave the hand through, breathing in as we come on back. Lovely. Now if you want to, we can start to open the arm up for the sky, so we get a rotation open as well as across. And we're changing arms each time. Those of us that have got any spine niggles, any shoulder niggles, this one hopefully will be feeling really lovely. One more on each side. And finishing off there. So we'll bring ourselves onto our fronts and find a nice lying position. I'm going to take my elbows wide and let the fingers point forward. So coming down onto the ground, elbows will go wide and the fingers will point forwards. Once we're there, the nose is going to look at the floor. I'm not going to do anything really dramatically exciting, so you can keep your eyes looking to the ground and let the nose hover an inch away from the floor. So we're going to, because you shouldn't be looking at me, I'm going to look up and talk at you. We're squeezing in through the tummy. So we've got the belly button drawing in towards the spine. At that point, I want you to connect into your pelvic floor if you can. So you're thinking about drawing pelvic floor up into the pelvis. Taking a nice deep breath. As you breathe out, shoulders are going to glide down the back, head's going to extend out and away, and the breastbone's going to lift away from the floor. You breathe in as you float back down. I'm coming down, I'm going to do it with you. So if you want a visual cue, by all means, stop and have a little look. So we'll keep this going, and we're going to see if we can allow the hands to be very delicately resting on the floor. And maybe the hands just hover an inch away from the floor. This time we'll lift the breastbone away from the floor. Let's pull the elbows towards one another and then let the fingers stretch as far towards the toes as we can. And then we'll bring them wide as we allow the hands to rest on back down. So shoulders glide down the back, elbows pull down. We reach the fingers towards the toes and then circling around to float back down. Taking two more like that. Shoulders glide down, fingers stretch away. And drawing back down. Last one. And floating down. Let's come onto our side. So I'm coming onto my right side. So as I imagine, if I'm looking at you, I'll be imagining you're on your left side. I want you to allow yourself to line up in a nice long line. So the bottom arm is as far over your head as it can be. Shoulders are on top of one another, hips are on top of one another, and we can just about see our toes if we can normally see our toes when we're standing. Take a nice deep breath and reach the legs away. Keep it, hold it there for me. If you have got shoulder issues and that causes problem through your neck, you want to put the cushion down now and allow the arm to come just in front of you. If you've got lower back issues that are causing an issue, bend the bottom knee in and allow the top leg to stay reaching. So we're all here, we're in a nice, this is a stamina exercise, which is why I got you into it, and now I've walked away and started talking at you. So we'll keep breathing, we'll keep lengthening. We're looking to allow the shoulders to be on top of one another and the hips to be on top of one another. This top hand might be able to lift off and rest by our side. Take a nice deep breath for me. We're going to allow that top leg to gently circle. Good. So we'll take 3 circles in one direction. And then we'll take 3 circles in the opposite direction. Lovely. When you finish there, allow that top leg, if you can, to dip down just in front of you and then lift and dip down just behind you. Keep that little archway going. You make that as big or as small as you feel it's appropriate to do. And do the same thing with that leg bent, just being really mindful if there's lower back issues, you might want to not take it behind you, you might want it to just dip down in line and then come in front. You're looking to keep that stability through the pelvis. Last one there. And we'll float the legs down, we'll soften in through the knees. And we'll allow the top hip to tip gently forwards. Squeezing in through the tummy. And let's allow the top knee to gently lift and lower. And we lift and lower. Good. Taking 3 more like that. And then we'll glue the knees together and allow both the feet to lift and lower. And we lift and lower. Good. You've got 3 more. Lovely. Finishing off there for me. Allow yourself to take that top leg in a little cycling pathway. So we'll allow the top foot to push out in front of us, cycle around, a little squeeze as it goes behind us, and then we draw in through the knee. So we're getting a really good range of movement through the whole of the knee and through the whole of that range of movement of the hip. Last one there. Let's see if we can take hold of that top foot, and then we'll bring that foot nice and close to the bottom and allow the knee to press away from us. So again, if you find it difficult to grab that foot, you could grab a band, wrap the band around your ankle and take hold of the foot. The other thing to be mindful of is as you're here, we'll allow the knee to be stretching away from us towards the skirting board. Check it's not lifting up towards the sky, but you've got a sense that it's extending out through the hip socket. Nice and deep with the breath. And then from there, releasing from there, allow both the arms to come forwards, and if you want to pop a cushion under your head, now's a good time to, as we take our opening like a book. Take a nice deep breath there, and we'll allow the top arm to gently open. Eyes are fixed on the hand. Breathe in as the arm gently draws back. So we're going to keep our eyes fixed on the hand as it's moving. It might be that the arm opens out and the arm ends up on the floor behind us, and that's a marvellous thing. If it doesn't go that far, that's okay. Notice if you get to a point where the arm's moving but your neck won't go any further. See if you can keep the eye on the thumb, and as soon as you start to lose connection with it, draw the arm back. Last one. And releasing from there, let's push down onto our hands and bring ourselves up to a seated position. We're going to go wide with the legs if we can. If you prefer to bring the feet together and let the knees go wide, making that diamond position, that's all marvellous too. So we're lifting nice and tall. We'll let the shoulders gently lift and roll back and down. And again, the shoulders lift and roll back and down. Just two more like that. Lovely. And then let the head gently tip from side to side. Lovely. Bringing the head into the centre, just soften through the knees for me there. Take the right arm across you. Taking a hold across the arm and let that shoulder drop down. So we've got a nice sort of stretch in the shoulder. Nice. And releasing there, changing over to the other side. Shoulder gently descends down the back. We just let it come across us. That's it, lovely. That's it, nice, good. And releasing from there. Once again, we'll stretch those legs away from us, draw the fingertips in towards one another. We're going to take our spine twist from here. So we'll let the rib cage gently rotate around, pelvis stays really nicely grounded, and we breathe in as we return back. Keep that going for me. Some of us in this position are being pulled backwards. So the options you've got there are, you either bring the cushion underneath your bottom and take a seat on it, bend through the knees, or there might be a different position of the legs that's more comfortable for you, but those are the ones that I recommend at this juncture. As we come towards that right leg this time, we're going to allow the left arm to reach towards the leg. We'll breathe in as we draw the torso back in and then rotate back round. And then we allow the left arm to reach. And we lift. So we're taking the opposite arm and reaching across to the leg. I never liked this exercise. It's called the saw. And then I did a little bit of training a couple of years ago, and the lady explained that as you do this, if you imagine that your arm is the saw and you're sawing off your little toe, that really worked for me. And if you can do yourself a little sound effect like a chainsaw, I find that even more beneficial. Extend and lengthen, see if you can just saw off your little toe. I was really tempted to do a sound effect then, but I've decided to pull back from that. That would be silly. And coming into the centre, let's give the legs a good jiggle. Jiggle, 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 wonderful. Let's come down onto our other side. So I'm going to come down onto my left side. So as far as I'm concerned, you'll be coming onto your right side. but just be aware if you know you're on the same side as me last time, then it might be slightly different. So we've got the shoulders on top of one another. Once again, the hips are on top of one another. Maybe the bottom arm can extend up and over the head in that really nice long line. Maybe the shoulder doesn't allow that, in which case the cushion comes in front, comes under the head and the arm comes in front. You might need a bigger cushion than the one that I've got. So we've got the shoulders on top of one another, and again, some of us find that this creates a little bit of a back issue, in which case we'll bend through the bottom leg. We're stretching and extending out and away. So I kind of make sure that I'm really pulled out through this bottom side between the rib cage and the hip, and then as I stretch away, the top leg's got to stretch even further to find that the distance between the ribs and the hip this side. Nice deep breath. Let's see if we can bring the hand by our side, and then we'll gently circle. We've got 3, 2 and 1, and then let's allow that top foot to just tuck down, just a little tap on the floor, lift on up, tap down behind you, and lift on up, tap down in front, lift up, tap down behind. Good, keep that going for me. See if you can make that archway a little bit bigger. See if you can really energise your top shoulder down your back, so it's not sneakily creeping up towards the ear, but you've got that sense of it really descending down. Let's make this our last one. And then we'll float the legs down and we'll soften in through the knees. Good, we take a deep breath there, we squeeze in nice and tight through the tummy, and we'll allow the top knee to gently lift and lower. Now see if you can tip that top hip nicely forwards, and as you do, hips stay really nice and still. So you might find, especially if you put your hand on your hip, you might notice that there's a little rock back and forwards. You get this fantastic range of movement through the knee. It feels marvellous, but it's not doing very much. So we'll see if we can keep the hip really still. Oh, and then we feel all the work going on through the leg and into the bottom. Oh, I think that's 5. Glue the knees together and allow both the feet to lift. I digress. Lovely. Last one there, and then we'll take that little cycle in action with the top foot. So we'll push the foot away from us, cycle all the way around, and drawing the knee back in. Push the foot away, cycling back and around, draw the knee back in. And taking 3 more like that. Good, and then we'll draw that foot in, and then we can sweep the foot close to the bottom and sweep the knee behind us. And again, if you find it difficult to grab hold of that foot, use a band. If you find that your knee's starting to pull up this way, I'd suggest that this outside of the thigh is quite tight, which means our IT band needs a bit of a stretch. We'll see if we can bring the knee into line with the hip. And release in there. And then allowing both the arms to come forwards. Let the head rest on down. Take in a nice deep breath, and as we breathe out, we'll allow ourselves to open out through the top arm. Eyes are fixed on the hand. And then we'll breathe in as we allow the arm to return. Keep that going for me. We are going to bring ourselves onto the floor, onto our backs in a minute. Oh, I've got itchy eye, sorry. So we'll bring ourselves onto our back in just a moment. Allow this to be your last one. I know that some people are finding that quite tricky at the moment, so I'm going to give you some options. Starting by having some cushions. So if you need to have a couple of cushions underneath your head to make this not so uncomfortable, pop some cushions under your head. Let's come on to our back then. So you might want to be cushioned up a little bit through the head. If you know that once you get here you've got a nice sense of length through the lower back and you don't need a cushion, get rid of it now. So we're going to do some work for finding a nice sense of centre here and do some challenging work through the core. Let's start off by allowing the feet to be just hip distance apart and the knees are bent, and we'll take a few little tips through the pelvis. And we'll allow ourselves to find that place where hip bone and pubic bone are level with one another. So we're not tipped in either direction in the pubic bone. And we've got that natural curve in the lower back. Rib cage rests down, arms are resting down by our side. With that squeeze in through the core muscles, we'll take a deep breath as we breathe out. Just allow the right foot to lift an inch away from the floor. And then floating that foot back down, changing over to the opposite side. And softening down. Once again on each side. Just taking that moment to check that if I put my cup of tea on your abdomen, you wouldn't spill a drop. Now from here we're going to allow that knee to lift, to hover above the hip socket, bringing the calf to that 90-degree angle. 3 little circles in one direction and then 3 in the other direction. So we're circling the leg around. The challenge is to keep the hips nice and still. So you can make the circle gradually larger as you want to. If you want to just take that opposite leg a little bit further away from you now, that's a good time to do it. Let's change to the opposite direction. Let's keep the rib cage nice and stable. So as you make the circle larger, your tendency will be to rock those hips from side to side and maybe rock the ribs around. We want to see if we can keep them really nice and stable. Keep the knee lifted. Take a deep breath for me there. I'm going to allow the toe to try to stretch up towards the sky and then bending at the knee. So we're trying to keep the knee above the hip socket. We'll go to that place just before you need to stretch, move the knee, and then floating back again. Just before you need to push the back into the ground. So we're going to keep neutral spine throughout. Now, holding that leg up there, take a breath, and we'll take those knee circles again, this time with the leg as extended as it can be, while still maintaining your neutral spine position. 3 in the opposite direction. You might notice that this circle's not quite as large as it was before. And release in there. Bring the knee in, give it a good hug, and then we'll slide the left leg away from us. Let the lower back press into the floor, let the shoulders sink down into the ground. Head is really nice and heavy there. And then we'll slide that left leg in, allow the right leg to rest onto the floor, and we do the same thing on the other side. So we want the hips and the pubic bone to be really nice and level. Strengthening in through the core. Allow the second leg to lift, allow the left leg to lift. So natural curve in the lower back, hips and pubic bone are level. We take 3 circles in one direction. Hips stay nice and still. So the larger you make this circle, the harder it is for you to keep the hips nice and still. If you want to slide the right leg out of your way, can do. Change the direction of the circle. And then from there, taking a nice deep breath, the knee hovers just above the hip socket. We allow the leg to start to stretch. So you can see that my leg doesn't stretch as far on the left side as it does on the right side. I'm obviously a bit tighter in the hamstrings. So I'm just going to respond to that by getting to that place where it's almost there and it starts to give a little shudder. That's as far as we're going to go. Last one, we keep it lengthened up there, and then we'll take that little circle. 3 in one direction. and then 3 in the opposite direction. And then draw that knee in, give it a good hug, stretch the right leg away from you. Letting the shoulders melt down into the ground, let the lower back press into the floor. Chin's tucked in and we're lengthening across the back of the neck. Nice deep breaths. So let's allow the feet to come onto the floor. We're going to find our shoulder bridge from here, which will work for some real nice flexibility through the spine. We'll take a deep breath in. As we breathe out, we're going to press the lower back into the floor. We're going to tip the tailbone up. We'll peel the spine away from the ground. And we'll keep moving until knees, hips and shoulders come into line with one another. Take a breath there. And then breathing out as we float back down. That's great, Rachel. Keep that going. Good. Pressing the lower back into the floor. Pelvis comes down. We return back to neutral. If you want to add the arms in, by all means do. I'll come to that in a second. When we get to the top of the shoulder bridge though, I want you to just take a little moment to check that you're not pushing the rib cage up, so we're not hyperextending through the ribs, but we've got that sense that there's a nice long line from knees to hips to shoulders, and then we float back down. So as promised, we've got arms. As we get to the top of the shoulder bridge, we'll allow the arms to lengthen up towards the sky, or they may want to go all the way over the head. We'll leave them there as we float the vertebrae back down. So notice for me that with the arms over the head, it's going to magnify any sticky parts of the spine, any bits that don't want to move independently of their next door neighbour. See if you can give those areas some extra breath and some extra time. And again, now this time if you want to, we're going to add some little leg lifts in. I'm going to put them in before the arms. Knees, hips and shoulders in line. Right foot starts to lift away from the floor. Now if the glutes aren't strong enough for this, the hamstrings will start to scream at you. So if the hamstrings are screaming at you, you can just keep rolling through the exercise or do some little bottom squeezes when you get to the top. Then we'll add the arms in, finding where that place is that feels as though you're challenging yourself without struggle. We're looking to find that articulation through the vertebrae. And if you want to, as the arms come back by your side, you can take that little abdominal curl up. Breathing in as we float back down. And rolling up through the spine. Now, I'm feeling that the circular theme is coming through in this session. So let's allow the right leg to lengthen up towards the sky. And then we'll see about taking a little circle here, just as we did a moment ago. And then we'll circle back the way we came and floating the leg down. Changing over to the other side. Watch out that your pelvis doesn't start to drop. We want to keep the pelvis in line with the knee, the supporting knee, and the shoulders. Floating the leg down. Wonderful. Arms lift up and over the head, or maybe to the sky. So that will allow you to get that little bit more purchase through the rib cage, through the vertebrae as you come on down. And then the arms return back by our side. Take a little abdominal curl up for me there. Breathing in as you float back down. Bring the right leg in and give it a little hug. And then we're going to stretch the leg away. So we have done a little bit of active work for the hamstrings, but I want to see if we can get a nice passive stretch into the hamstrings. So if you want to wrap a band around your foot and hold on to the ends, you can do. Otherwise, we're holding on around the back of the thigh. If you don't have a band, a jumper, or a towel, or a belt would be really fabulous. Now here's the IT band coming in, so we'll allow that leg to come just a few inches across the midline of the body, almost like you're lining it up with your opposite shoulder. Still encouraging the leg to come close to you, but now you've got that little bit coming across, and that should stretch out on that outside of the leg. That I spoke about earlier when we did our quad stretch. If your knee pops upwards, it might be a tightening in the IT band, which this may address. And then releasing from there, let's take that right foot across the left knee. Let the right knee fall open to the side. If you're happy to, from here, we'll weave the hands around the supporting leg thigh and draw the leg in. You might even want to rest your foot onto a wall or something so that you can get that nice glute stretch without having to do much work in the upper body. And releasing from there. Let's change over to the other side. So we'll stretch the left leg up towards the sky, taking hold around the back of the thigh. So with each breath, we just allow ourselves to really release the head down into the floor. We let the shoulders release on down. Maybe that leg's starting to ease in a little bit closer. And then we'll take a breath and allow that leg to come across the body. Just a few inches as you feel it lengthening across the outside of the leg. See if you can allow the shoulders to release down and find that length in the neck so your chin isn't jutting upwards but it's releasing down. And then taking that leg across you, let the left knee fall open to the side. We'll weave the hands around the right thigh and ease that leg in close to us. And again, just taking a moment to ease into that stretch, seeing if we can get that nice sense of release into the glutes. Shoulders melt down into the ground. And release in there. Bringing both the knees in towards the chest. We're going to give them a little hug, so you might want to gently rock from side to side. Those of us that have got back issues at the moment, those of us that have got any hip issues at the moment, you might want to take a little roll around with that. I mean, like, let the knees roll around. Those of us that are feeling like we're really confident and happy with the exercise, we'll pull the head up towards the knees and we'll rock ourselves forwards and backwards. Let's see if we can build a bit of momentum, and we're going to ping ourselves up to sitting. Once we're there, we'll just take 3 rolling like a ball in our own time. If you know rolling like a ball does not work for you and your body, by all means, release forwards into a nice hip stretch. Otherwise, we're going to allow ourselves to bring the hands onto our shins. Shin tucks in slightly, lengthening across the back of the neck, tucking under through the lower back. We rock back, head and neck stay away from the floor. Last one. And then let's all of us find that little pose with the toes hovering just a little way away from the floor. Shoulders gliding down the back and the breastbone is lifted. We're going to take one more breath here. We're going to rock backwards. We're going to plant our feet. We're going to ping up to standing. Or we're going to come onto a crouch position and roll up to standing. So we'll all join each other in a standing position. It might be that rolling up through the spine doesn't work for you, in which case you can step one leg forwards and come up to standing in that way instead, or you might find that, you know, something, a bit of furniture or something can help you up. Wonderful. Once we get there, feet are just underneath the hips, toes are pointing forwards, tailbone descends down towards the space between the heels. Head extends up towards the space above us. Lifting the shoulders, we'll roll the shoulders back and down. Lovely. Take a deep breath in, reaching really tall. Breathing out, and we'll let it all go. Give it a good shake out. Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done, guys. So if there's any questions or feedback, please do stop and have a chat with me. Thanks for joining me, Facebook Livers. I will be back on Monday, so I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.